Do they carry different personalities, for lack of a better word? You sometimes see the associated, agitation or aggression with some forms of dementia. Is that across the board, or is one more particular than the other one?
There's some more particular than the other, but you do see agitation in Alzheimer's. You do, and there's actually studies out there that are looking on how to treat those symptoms. But you also see in frontal temporal dementia patients a lot of different personality changes and agitation, as well as Lewy body. So it looks different, but you do have some sort of agitation across those different dementias.
Hmm. And beyond age, what are the biggest risk factors for developing dementia of all types? Is it genetics? Is it cardiovascular health, lifestyle habits? What is it?
You hit the nail on the head. It's all of the above, right? Genetics does play a role. Our environment does play a role. We have actually seen some current studies that are looking at noise pollution and how that can play a role. Also, your diet is very important, right? What you eat. You are what you eat, is what we say. So we also encourage people to look at the MIND diet. The MIND diet is actually for brain health, and it includes, green leafy vegetables, olive oil, fish, poultry, vegetables, fruit. So that plays a major role, right? And then what we want to just make sure you're aware of your surroundings and how social, right, you are, right? And then how much sleep you get. Sleep is a very big determinant of your cognitive health. So it's very important to get a lot of sleep.
Now, you mentioned something that really triggered my interest. You said noise pollution, right?
Yes.
Now, you see people walking around all the time with headphones on. You hear them on the plane, and you're like, hey, even though you have your headphones on, I can still hear everything you're listening to. Is that the type of noise that you're talking about? Is it just the loudness of it, or is it you're listening, it's a loud noise for prolonged periods of time?
A long noise for prolonged periods of time. So also where you live, like in city, like urban areas,
Right.
when we talk about, right, hearing ambulances, right, police, hearing outside noise, hearing cars at night, that type of thing too plays a role in noise pollution. But like you said, also just the everyday occurrence that we hear, prolonged, right? How loud is our earbuds? How loud is our music that we're listening to? Because that can affect our overall cognitive health.
And what are some of the signs, the early signs of dementia development, and how important is early diagnosis to actual treatment plans? Like, are there any treatment plans available?
There are some treatment plans available. We actually have several medications that are now FDA approved, but it's very important to have an early diagnosis in order to get right. Make sure that you qualify for those medications. Some of the symptoms that you want to look for is if it's affecting your daily life, right? If it's something that's really affecting how you navigate throughout the day, right? If your judgment, right? Your judgment, is that affected? Communication, language, right? If you can't remember, I like to give an example of, let's say you see a remote, right? And you just can't remember what that remote is for. What does it do, right? Those kind of things, right? You're driving, right? And you just forget how to get to your destination, right? Like, you've done it multiple times, you've done it before, but you forget all of a sudden on how to get there. So those are some of the symptoms you want to look out for. And it's always important, like we say, to also talk about these concerns and symptoms with your primary care physician.
And if you are that person that says, hey, you mentioned where the remote, I've done that earlier this week, or I was driving home and I had no clue how I ended up where I ended up. Are there any foods, vitamins, or anything that could potentially slow the process of this dementia getting more progressively worse?
Yeah, that's a great question. You just want to make sure that you do understand where your vitamin levels are. I know vitamin D is very important, plays a vital role. I know in the African American Black community, we tend to see lower vitamin D levels. So that's important that we have, you eat the foods that you need, right? Leafy vegetables, right? Drink milk, right? That type of thing, dairy. That's where you can get some of that vitamin D, and get plenty of sun, right? Sun, that helps with those vitamin D levels. There is still research out there about what you can eat. I know there's been some studies about the red grapes, the how they can help with cognitive decline over time. But like I had mentioned, the mind diet, just making sure you eat lean meat like poultry, fish, green, leafy vegetables, nuts, olive oil. Those tend to help prevent or reduce the risk of dementia.
Hmm. And is there one group or subgroup more likely to progress to dementia, whether that's race, gender, a region within our country? Does it tend to impact some more than others?
Yes, unfortunately, it does. It tends to affect the Black and African American community.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's when compared to Caucasians. And we are 35% less likely to receive a diagnosis.
Mm.
So, unfortunately, we wait until it's too late to get to that diagnosis, right? And by 2060, it is expected that Alzheimer's will quadruple among African American and Black communities.
Wow.
So it's so important. And I also want to share that we're also looking at the role that Alzheimer's plays on perimenopause and menopause, because it does. There's some effects that we're seeing that it does affect women more, right? And we're looking at that perimenopause and menopause stage of what's going on there. Why are those differences? Because as you looking at those statistics, it affects Black women more than any other group in the United States.
And can you explain that perimenopausal period? Is there something that's being shown in those groups of women that says, hey, if this is happening when you're in the perimenopausal time frame, we may need to be more aggressive of getting you on early treatments so that you don't force it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things we're looking at is the role of estrogen, right? Because when you look at perimenopause, menopause, right, estrogen depletes, right? We really don't have as much as we did when we were younger. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at the role that estrogen plays. And also some people say they get brain fog, right, around perimenopause, right? They also have memory problems and concerns. And we're trying to see what is the connection between that, right, and cognitive decline. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, there is some studies out there, but we need to do a lot more just to understand those differences.